The revolution will be live.
This morning, and potentially how he feels about the idea that his former attorney said that he would put his wife, his son, his family, and his country first, but not the president.
Once again, I'm not going to weigh into this issue and refer the president's outside counsel.
It's a good thing then that we have the president's outside counsel here, Rudy Giuliani. Thanks for coming back, Mayor. Let's start right there. What was the president's reaction to that interview from Michael Cohen?
Same as mine, which is fine. I mean, Michael Cohen should cooperate with the government. We have no reason to believe he did anything wrong. The president did nothing wrong with him, so we've gone through every document we can. We see no evidence of it. The fact that Mueller gave
all 1.3 million documents?
1.4 that we produced. Also, Mueller himself has indicated that there's nothing here because he would have given it away, and he hasn't taken it back. And every indication we have is the president is not involved in that. And I'm hoping that Michael is able to clear himself, because I think what was done to him was really unfair. And I know he's being sensible and calm and trying to say that prosecutors did nothing wrong. But invading a lawyer's office, I don't know, George, that doesn't seem right to me.
Well, they said it wasn't an invasion. He had no problem, as you saw, with how that
if you were in his
conducted.
position, I think I'd advise you to say that, too.
So you have no concerns at all about anything that Michael Cohen might tell the prosecutors?
None. As long as he tells the truth, we're home free.
But just to be clear, though, the joint defense agreement that Cohen had with the president's legal team, that is no longer operable?
I'm not really allowed to talk about that, but it wouldn't matter whether it was or it wasn't. We think we know everything we need to know at this point.
And the president's legal defense fund is no longer paying Michael Cohen's legal bills? Again,
that's not something I'm allowed to comment on, but it wouldn't matter one way or the other. We want Michael to handle this in the way that's most helpful to him. Michael's not going to lie. He's going to tell the truth. As long as he does that, we have nothing to fear.
Has the president or his team, anyone in his team, had any conversations with Michael Cohen or his attorneys about a possible pardon?
No, not at all. I've advised the president, which he understands, no discussion of pardons. You can't abridge your power to do it. That's something you can decide down the road one way or the other.
So you're not going to rule it out in the future?
Well, I don't think you should. I mean, that wouldn't be fair to the president, wouldn't be fair to Cohen, wouldn't be fair to future presidents. But the fact is there's no reason for a pardon right now, or even to consider it. And quite honestly, it would just confuse everything.
You say you're not concerned at all about what Michael Cohen may say, but he is facing some potential legal jeopardy, in part dealing with that Stormy Daniels case. When I asked Cohen if the president directed him to make the payments to Stormy Daniels, he said he couldn't answer on advice of counsel. Did the president direct Michael Cohen to make those payments?
As far as I know, from his original statements and the president's statements and everything I've seen in terms of documents and the way it was reimbursed, no, the president did not originally know. At some point, probably a little foggy as to exactly when, the president found out and reimbursed him. I think that's the clear point, because, and second, wasn't a campaign contribution. This is something you would have paid for no matter what.
But to be clear, the president did not direct Michael Cohen in advance to make those payments.
As far as I know, that is right. And second, even if he had, that would not necessarily be anything. If the president directed him to settle the case, he would have done that a year before, a year after. Didn't matter that he was running for office. That's something you settle because you don't want your family to be embarrassed. And the amount of money involved, $140,000, would indicate it was a nuisance settlement, as opposed to the millions of dollars that have been given away in cases like that in the past.
But the president did not promise in advance to reimburse Cohen for that?
That I don't know, whether there was an understanding between them. That I think Cohen knew he'd be reimbursed. It didn't seem to be any trouble in working out the reimbursement with the accountants.
There was another question that came up in my interview with Michael Cohen. It had to do with the Trump Tower meeting, that famous now Trump Tower meeting. Don Jr., Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort all met with these Russians who had indicated they had some dirt on Hillary Clinton. When I asked Michael Cohen, did the president know about that meeting ahead of time, again, he refused to answer on advice of counsel. What is the answer to that question?
Don't believe he did know about it. Don't believe he knew about it afterwards. I think that you could have very, very differing recollections on that, because it was right in the heat of the campaign. And I was probably there that day. I don't remember it. Did somebody say something to me? I don't know. That goes off in you know what a campaign is like. It's complete helter-skelter. Again, it doesn't mean anything because it resulted in nothing. That went nowhere. She tried to get back in. She didn't. They never did anything with it.
Well, what it could mean is that the president and his team have said he didn't know about it in advance. If it turns out that he did, then at least he hadn't been telling the truth.
Well, I think you end up there with, at most, differing recollection. Since nothing happened with it, there'd be no reason to hide it. I mean, he could have said, yes, they did tell me about it. And what happened? Nothing.
I want to move on to Robert Mueller, but I just want to be very clear. You have no concerns that Michael Cohen is going to flip on the president.
I have no concerns that Michael Cohen is going to not do anything but tell the truth. And if he does, as I said, there's no suggestion that anything happened. The way you'd find out if he did flip on the president as opposed to just flip, I don't know what that means, but the case would have to go back to Mueller because Rosenstein has made the decision that that the presidential part of this should be handled by an independent counsel. I don't think the Southern District will be able to handle that, at least beyond a certain point.
Let's talk about Robert Mueller. The New York Times reported that President Trump won't agree to an interview with Robert Mueller unless Mueller first proves he has evidence that President Trump committed a crime. That was based on an interview with you. Is that the current condition?
Yeah, but I have to modify that a bit. Just look at my quote. My quote is not evidence of a crime. It's a factual basis for the investigation. We've been through everything on collusion and obstruction. We can't find an incriminating anything. And we need a basis for this investigation, particularly since we now know it was started by biased people.
We have James Comey's testimony.
Well, Comey's testimony is hardly worth anything. And nor did he ever... James Comey had never found any evidence of collusion and rules out obstruction by saying the president had a right to fire me. So all the rest of it is just politics. I mean, the reality is Comey, in some ways, ends up being a good witness for us. Unless you assume they're trying to get him into a perjury trap, he tells his version, somebody else has a different version.
How is he a good witness for the president if he's saying that the president was asking him, directing him, in his words, to let the Michael Flynn investigation go?
He didn't direct him to do that. What he said to him was, can you give him a break?
Comey says he took it as direction.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I've taken it that way. I mean, by that time, he had been fired. And he said a lot of other things, some of which have turned out to be untrue. The reality is, as a prosecutor, I was told that many times. Can you give the man a break? Either by his lawyers, by his relatives, by friends. You take that into consideration, but that doesn't determine that not going forward with it. Also, the obstruction statute they want to charge him with or write a report about.
You know they want to charge him with something?
No, I don't know that. But that I think are investigating, although they've never really told us what they're investigating, which is what we want to know. It says you have to actually obstruct. No, there's no obstruction here. If you look at the Lester Holt interview, which NBC unfortunately doesn't play the end of, the president says, when Lester Holt asks him, do you expect this investigation to go on? On tape, the president says, of course I do. In fact, I believe it's going to go on longer now, and I did it for the best interest of the people, of the country. The president knew the investigation was going to go on. It did go on. That's the best fact that we have. Nothing interfered with Mueller getting to the end of this investigation.
You've been on the case now for several months, and it seems like every time you come on, you're stretching out the timeline for when a possible encounter with Mueller will happen. First, it was going to be within a couple of weeks. Then it was going to be after the Singapore meeting with the North Korean leader. Have you simply determined that the president is not going to sit down for an interview?
We have not. We're close to determining that. But the reason for the extension are the extraordinary things that happened that we didn't expect. It began before I started with the Cohen thing. It took a while to unravel all that. Then the Horowitz report is devastating. I mean, it's 500+ pages. There are more things in that you have to review than you can imagine. And it casts a taint over the entire investigation. It was started, Mueller hired originally as his chief investigator, a man that has some kind of vicious bias against Donald Trump. Out of all the FBI agents, how you could select that guy is beyond...
Well, as soon as he found out about the text, he fired him.
Yeah, but other people had to find it out. He didn't find it out. He didn't vet him properly. Nor has he vetted the people he has with him right now. He's got very, very severe partisans working on an investigation that should be done by people who are politically neutral.
This has been part of a case that you and the president have been making for some time now. I was struck by an op-ed in the Washington Post this weekend by Bill Frist, the former Senate Republican leader. He's saying basically that the White House should stop attacking Robert Mueller, should simply cooperate. He says, it isn't easy to tell a president of your own party that he is wrong, but the assault on Mueller's investigation does not help the president or his party. When Trump talks about firing the special counsel or his power to pardon himself, he makes it seem as though he has something to hide. The president must remember that only Mueller's exoneration can lift the cloud hanging over the White House.
Well, Bill's a good guy, but he's not a lawyer. I don't think, nor has he ever defended someone who's being wrongfully accused. The reality is that there are biases that have to be explored surrounding Mueller. How you could end up hiring a group of people that are as prejudiced and biased as this group, in their record at least, is extraordinary. And then how you can expect us to just walk up our client like a lamb going to the slaughter. We wouldn't be lawyers if we were doing that. George, he wants to testify. He believes
It's hard to believe that anymore, Ms. Mayor.
Well, it is hard to believe, given all the things that have been shown about how tainted this investigation is. This is the most corrupt investigation I have ever seen that the Justice Department is allowing to go forward. I've never seen an investigation with texts from FBI agents, now 7 of them, that have such extraordinary bias against the person.
Those predated Robert Mueller.
Well, that's the investigation he inherited, with a lot of the testimony that he inherited. And then he went ahead and didn't do anything to purge himself of that.
He fired him.
He fired him after somebody else found out. Well, how about looking at the texts of all of his people? Does his number 2 guy, his number 3 guy, his number 4 guy have similar texts in which they're talking about how much they hate Trump? I don't know.
Final question.
They shouldn't react that way.
The president has also put out tweets questioning the constitutionality of the special counsel. He said the appointment of the special counsel is totally unconstitutional. Despite that, we play the game because I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong. Is that going to be part of the president's formal defense that the special counsel?
Well, that's based on several articles, the most prominent of which from Professor Calabrese, in which he argues that given the way this particular independent counsel was appointed, it's unconstitutional. Frankly, we haven't really researched that with the depth that we should to see if we would raise it. Of course, you raise every argument in favor of your client. So it would be hard for us to reject that from such a prominent person as Professor Calabrese.
Mr. Mayor, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Let's give some analysis now from our legal panel. Alan Dershowitz, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, also